Cities 92.9, the news and talk of Bloomington normal. Today is Memorial Day. And I always say, I hate saying Happy Memorial Day. We've got Mike Kirkton because it's one of these days where I take a lot of time to reflect about those who have served and sacrificed for this wonderful country of ours. And we have freedom. Freedom isn't free, right, Mike?
That's right.
Mike with me. He's got 25 years of service, just under 25 years of service, U.S. Army, Bronze Star, retired Lieutenant Colonel. Mike, thanks so much for joining me here on the show.
Thank you. It's great to be here, Kat, and I appreciate the opportunity, especially today, to talk about veterans who have served and given their life for our country, because that's really what Memorial Day is all about. It's recognizing and honoring those that serve, that made the ultimate sacrifice. So it's not a happy day for veterans, especially those of us that have served in combat and understand full well what that means. But it's a great day to reach out and touch my fellow veterans, at least in some small way, and also to help people understand what this day really means and what it's all about.
Yeah, so actually, Mike, you might be a great person to ask the difference between Veterans Day and Memorial Day. I feel
Right.
like not a lot of people know the difference. So
Right.
could you explain that for our listeners?
Yeah, it's a great point. Veterans Day, quite frankly, is meant to honor all current serving members in the armed forces, as well as those that have retired and served. But Memorial Day is not really focused on veterans. It's focused on those that made the ultimate sacrifice. That's what Memorial Day is all about. So this day, people that have had family members that have made the ultimate sacrifice, veterans that have served in units where individuals made that ultimate sacrifice. Today's the day to kind of reflect and remember those individuals. And it's a day that I will tell you that all veterans, whether they're serving now or have served, take pretty seriously.
Yeah. Well, and I want to give you some time here, Mike, because you, like me, I'm going to take some time a little bit later in the show and I'll pay tribute to some of the members in my family who have served. But you come from a long line of those who have served this country. You mind telling me a little bit about your family and those who have served?
Yeah. We are getting ready. My wife and our family is going to Milwaukee. My second youngest son is graduating from Milwaukee School of Engineering. He's a computer software engineer. He is being commissioned as a second lieutenant in the United States Army on Saturday, and he will go into what's called the new cyber branch. The U.S. Army assessed about 78 new lieutenants into that branch this year, so it's a pretty hard branch to get into. And Mike will begin his service starting on Saturday as a brand new second lieutenant in the U.S. Army. So I served. Mike's mom, my wife Janet, is also a retired lieutenant colonel. She served 21 years. My father served during the Korean War. Janet's dad and stepfather, her dad served during Vietnam. Her stepdad served during World War II with the 3rd Infantry Division. My brother served. He's a retired master sergeant living in Michigan. And we also have our foster daughter, who is a staff sergeant. She just got assigned to Washington, D.C., so she's going to the Pentagon. Our niece on my wife's side is a promotable to lieutenant colonel. She's stationed in D.C. We have another, and her husband also is a CW2 in the U.S. Army. Our other niece is a captain in military intelligence, U.S. Army, and her husband is a brand new first lieutenant in the United States Marine Corps.
Wow.
And then her brother, Richie, he is also a retired E7. So we're expecting, and I'll probably miss somebody, but we have 14 relatives, family members, all coming this weekend to recognize my son at his commissioning, either currently serving or have served in the military in some form or fashion.
Wow. Well, a huge thank you to your family, and thank you, Mike Kirkton, for your service. There is no greater love than this, than to lay one's life down for a friend. And every time you sign
Absolutely.
on that dotted line, right, you say you are willing to make that ultimate sacrifice. And I do want to ask you about your Bronze Star.
Okay.
Now, how does that work? You know, just for our listeners, how are you awarded these different stars, and why did you get your Bronze Star?
Um, I received my Bronze Star specifically from combat action in Desert Shield, Desert Storm specifically. Um, my unit was part of an operation in the initial attack up the Wadi al Batin, where we made combat or contact with Iraqi forces on the 20th of February. You remember the ground war started on, I think, around the 20th or 21st. My unit specifically that I was in command of we were already in Iraq on the 18th, 19th, conducting reconnaissance missions. And then, of course, we led the attack up the Wadi al Batin, where we made contact with Iraqi forces.
Mm.
And that was part of the move for 7th Corps to conduct that big end around um, that went up to the north side of Kuwait, northwest side of Kuwait. And so after my unit made that contact, then we continued the attack into Iraq, into Kuwait, where we were on the final day when operations were ceased. We were making contact with the Taiwan Division and the Hammurabi divisions of the Republican Guards.
Mm.
So,
So, your unit, what was this like, Mike? I know you've told me about it before, and I'm going to get teary eyed if you talk about it too much, but you've told me before a little bit about your unit and this brotherhood that you kind of experience.
right.
Are you still in contact with anybody
Yeah.
from your unit? And what can you describe this brotherhood that kind of happens when you're in a unit and when you're carrying out a mission?
Yeah, it's really interesting to me. When you go through combat, how close you come with the soldiers, the men that you served with. Um, and I guess it's you go through something that's that violent over a period of time. You grow close with your men, and I did especially. I was a company commander. Commanded a little over 125 men in combat. Uh, uh, my unit, the Alpha Company of 1st Battalion of the 5th Cav, was in the 1st Cavalry Division, 2nd Brigade. And so we had my unit consisted of the Bradley Infantry Fighting Vehicle and M1 tanks. And then, you know, I have to say, God bless Facebook, because it's surprising to me the number of soldiers that I've served with in combat that I communicate quite often with on Facebook now. It's really kind of brought us together. About approximately 50 soldiers that I served with, I routinely talk to on Facebook, either through instant messenger or post, and so we're trying to get together kind of a mini reunion for our unit right now.
Hmm.
And then we also recognize some of the soldiers and officers that we served with that have since passed away since our return from the desert.
Mm. Now, I think that this is kind of important, and the landscape, the geopolitical landscape at that time. So, what were the years you were there in combat and leading your unit?
Um, I, what was it? I'm probably going to get dates
I
wrong.
stumped
Thanks a
you.
lot.
I stumped you. So,
No,
the reason
we,
I ask is, and I don't know how much you can disclose. Um,
yeah,
why were you over there? Why were you fighting? Were we in like some sort of period or wartime period?
yes, we were. So the 1st Cav Division in 1990 was part of what was called the Rapid Deployment Force, the RDF. So the 82nd Airborne Division, the 101st, the 1st Cav Division, those are the three that I know of for sure. We're all part of the United States Army's Rapid Deployment Force. Clearly, the 101st and 82nd can get to hostile territory much quicker than the 1st Cav Division. It took us about a month to get there because all our Bradleys and tanks were shipped to Beaumont, Texas to put on transport ships and then sailed over to the Arabian Sea, where we downloaded all of that equipment in the Port of Dammam. So we deployed, we were one of the first units to deploy along with the 82nd, getting into Saudi Arabia. And then we spent the next, 5-6 months kind of just sitting around the desert, quite frankly, training, getting ready, putting our equipment together before the National Command Authority made the decision to conduct the attack into Iraq and Kuwait.
Okay, so anybody in your unit, you obviously saw combat, get injured, hurt.
Yep.
Tell me a little bit about that.
I'll tell you a little bit. It's not something I relish talking about, quite frankly. So I'll probably be very cursory in my discussion of this because I just don't talk about it to a lot of people, especially, and don't be offended, non-combat veterans, because it's just something I don't relish talking about. But I lost 3 soldiers on the 20th. PFC Arden B. Cooper, Sergeant Ronald Randazzo, and Staff Sergeant Jimmy Hawes were killed by direct fire in our contact that day. We also had 9 wounded that we had to care for, 9 to 11 that were wounded and had to be medically back from the contact as we continued the fight up the Wadi Al-Batin.
Well, I appreciate you sharing that with me, and I know it's tough to talk about because these are like your brothers, right? You talked about that relationship, and from veterans I've talked to in the past, you build this bond, and yeah, it's the ultimate sacrifice. I did also want to ask you your specific job, and obviously it was leading this unit, but like in the unit, are there jobs assigned to the soldiers and your job and maybe another member in your unit, what was his job? And so that way our listeners can kind of understand what all goes into an operation, because I think that we just think it's a troop of guys and they just kind of march and have guns, but there's just so much more, and there's so much more like everybody has an individual talent, right? So you might work at State Farm or something like that, or a worker might be at State Farm and you have a specific talent, you're the marketing brain and you're doing your job, and then somebody's doing customer service, somebody's doing the IT, right? So there's all these different people that bring something different to the table. And from what I've learned in the years past is that everybody brings something to the unit, and everybody's unique within the unit, and they're all going towards a common goal, which is to carry out the mission. So could you share with me your job and then maybe like your role and somebody in your unit's role?
Yes. So I commanded an infantry company. We were mounted on Bradley infantry fighting vehicles. So you have a Bradley fighting vehicle looks like a mini tank. It's got the main gun is a 25 millimeter chain gun. And inside are 6 dismounts that once we stop, make contact, the ramp comes down and then the dismounts get out to, take the close fight to the enemy. In my organization that I commanded, as at the tip of the spear of the 1st Cav Division, I had 14 Bradley infantry fighting vehicles, all infantrymen, a platoon, 4 M1 A2 Abrams tanks, a combat engineer platoon to breach obstacles if we encountered any. And then I also had a section of air defense artillery. So overall, the size of my force that I was in command of, I was directly responsible for, was 14 Bradley fighting vehicles, 4 M1 tanks, 4 engineer combat vehicles, and then 3 air defense artillery combat armored vehicles. And then, of course, there's all the logistics support that goes to support that. So Humvees, trucks, all that stuff that does the logistics of bringing, food, fuel, ammunition to support the organization in combat.
Hmm.
So it was a pretty large force that I was in command of. I had 3 rifle platoon leaders that worked for me, a tank platoon leader, an engineer platoon leader. Of course, I had a company executive officer, another lieutenant. I also had a artillery forward observer lieutenant that was part of my organization. So it was a fairly large, robust organization.
Hmm.
And remember, we actually, I crossed as a company with just my command only, crossed into Iraq on the 19th of February, ahead of everybody else. And then my battalion for the fight up the Wadi al-Batin linked up with my unit on the morning of the 20th at about 6 a.m. The battalion caught up with me because I was well forward of the division and the battalion and the brigade conducting a reconnaissance mission in the Wadi al-Batin to locate the enemy. And then the rest of the battalion caught up with my unit, and then we continued the attack, north up to the Wadi al-Batin.
Hmm. Well, Mike, we're getting close to the end of our time here, but I wanted to ask him, any message that you would like to share with, those who might be missing, somebody who made that ultimate sacrifice, somebody who lost their life. I know a lot of some listeners, they have close family members who never made it home, and they might be thinking about them this morning. And I think that
Absolutely.
maybe hearing from you would provide them a little bit of comfort and know that they're not alone, and that you share the same respect I do 100% for our veterans who have served and those who made the ultimate sacrifice, which is what Memorial Day is all about, is paying tribute to those who lost their lives. So, Mike, any message that you'd like to share with those particularly who are grieving after losing somebody in the service?
Yeah, I think first of all, there's nothing I can say that will make anybody feel better about losing somebody or losing a comrade in combat. We all raise our right hand, and we understand that sacrifice is possible. It's hard to convey, emotional feelings about how that makes someone feel or the effect it's going to have. All of us veterans understand that that's a possibility, and we raised our right hand to defend our country. So I would say to somebody that's had a family member that's lost their life in combat serving the country, be proud of them, honor them, remember them for sure, and remember all those soldiers that they served with. Our service in the U.S. Army specifically, because that's what I know about, goes back 250 years. So I would say honor them, remember them, but more importantly, be proud that they were doing something that they signed up to do, and with the intent of serving their country. They're, unfortunately to say, sacrifices are made, and they gave their life for something bigger than themselves. I mean, that's what being in the military is all part of. You're part of an organization that's bigger than yourself. There's no I, it's about teamwork and about we. We did this, we accomplished this mission. I mean, if you look at just Desert Storm, we accomplished the mission to liberate Kuwait in approximately 100 hours. I mean, we haven't seen a force that went into the desert in the 91. We haven't seen a force like that since World War II. And so it's a great credibility to the American soldier and their families. And I will tell you, a lot gets looked over when servicemen are serving away. Don't forget that their families are still here. May not have as good a contact with them, but they're making sacrifices as well. Families wives, brothers, sisters, husbands. They're all making sacrifices as well as that service member goes off into harm's way.
Mm-hmm.
We
Well,
pray for them.
yes, yes. Always prayers up for servicemen and women
Absolutely.
who are continuing to serve, and then also praying for those who are grieving. Whether it's a fellow comrade who lost a serviceman or a woman in combat, or a family member. So I appreciate your time, Mike, and I appreciate your service. And have a blessed Memorial Day as you reflect on the sacrifices made by our servicemen and women. I appreciate it.
Thank you. And God bless you, Kat, for giving me this opportunity and honor veterans that have made the ultimate sacrifice. Thank you. It's appreciated.
Well, it's Cities 92.9. Come back after the break, folks. Good morning. You're listening to Cities 92.9, and we have a Memorial Day special program for you this morning from 6 to 8 a.m. You can always catch the show today. I'm going to be talking with Nick Gobtop. He's the program manager. Am I getting that right? Of Veterans Maintenance Solutions. Did I get that right, Nick?
Yeah, correct. I'm the project manager of the organization.
Yeah. Well, thanks so much for coming on the program today. First, tell us a little bit about Veterans Maintenance Solutions, what you guys do, and the service you provide for veterans, and about how many veterans would you say you serve?
Well, in the past couple years, we've probably gotten close to 200 veterans that we helped in the Central Illinois community, from something as simple as installing handrails to full renovations to bathroom installs and installing smart home tech in their homes to help them be able to control their living conditions a little bit better.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So walk me through a day in a life of Nick and the team at Veterans Maintenance Solutions. How does it kind of work? Do veterans reach out to you? How do you get your jobs? And then what does a job look like? And when you get out to the site, what do you do from there? So just describe to me maybe even the last job that you did for a veteran, and you don't have to use names or anything like that. Just
Sure.
generic.
Generally we get from word of mouth is a lot of times how we get people contacting us, or it's the children of older vets that a lot of times reach out to us as well. And then what we do is we assess what they need. Like we are doing a ramp right now for a veteran in Normal. We actually had to break out an old sidewalk and concrete stoop area, and then we noticed that there was a hole in the foundation, so we had to get a mason in there to at least shore up that hole before we put the new stoop in with the ramp. And so that's ready to go at this point now, and they'll probably be done before Memorial Day, right before Memorial Day. So that'll be really good to get them be able to get in and out of the house easier at that point. So that's one project we've done. Another one we've recently done is an entire fence. Pickets and stuff were going bad because it's old, so we literally replaced the fence for the veteran and got that taken care of, so his dogs would stop getting out of his yard, because that was the issue with that. And then another project we've done recently is bathroom installs, and those are always interesting, and you never know really what you won't run into when you take out an old tub. If there's mold, rot, whatever, you just have to deal with it. That's kind of what we do with that side of helping with repairs around the house. And then the smart home tech program we're doing with Ameren, we literally have an office that has storage of the products, because we have to have so much product to be able to do the installs that we do depending on the week, between 4 and 8 installs a week, depending on availability of the veteran to be able to install at that point.
Mm-hmm. Now, this accessibility initiative, you mentioned it with Ameren, Illinois. Now, here's what Ameren says. It's to enhance the lives of Ameren, Illinois residents with disabilities and accessibility barriers through installation of various energy-efficient smart home devices. So this is a completely free program for veterans. right?
Yes, it is. It is a completely free program to veterans. All they have to do is they have to just tell us that they have some type of disability rating from the VA, and most veterans nowadays have some type of rating from service. And then what we do is we go in, we install Google Nest products and smart lights.
Incredible. You're right. And so I'm seeing this here. You're a program ally, and you can be reached at 309-726-2102, correct?
That is correct.
Yeah. So this is really cool because as if you have a disability, or even like the smart devices can be a big help. You don't have to get up. If you're disabled, you can do everything really from your smartphone. And if you aren't as able as you used to be, say you were disabled from the service and from your really sacrifice, you'd be able to have like a security, right? Because these smart devices can even be like security, like a Ring doorbell or something like that. So I know that that's going to help out a ton of veterans, and I'm so excited that you're a partner with Amarin in that program. Tell me a little bit, Nick, about what you do, and like, how many veterans do you serve? Maybe like on a weekly basis. I know you opened and you said, what is it, 200 or so vets?
Yeah, it's about what we've helped in the past, 3-4 years roughly in total. And next year we're going to be looking to do more installs with our Amarin program being their ally. And it's going to be very busy, I think, going into next year, because they want us to increase the volume of installs going into next year. So if we run out of spots this year, people should be able to get on the list for next year at that point, because once we come up to the budget's over for the program this year, we just pop them into the next year one if they can wait that long. And the good thing is you get a couple cameras, a Ring type doorbell from Google, and then you get air purifier and a thermostat, and you can all control that by voice or by your phone. So when you're not even at home, you can tell what's going on at your home from the cameras, or you can tell lights to turn on as you're coming home, or you can tell the thermostat to kick on and off whenever you need to at that point.
So, why start something like Veterans Maintenance Solutions? What was the birth story, I guess, of this organization, Nick?
Well, we had a family business that does a lot of different things as well, and knowing that a lot of veterans don't really have a lot of funds to just do the simple things, just like install a small, simple handrail to get in and out of the garage or their, front or back steps. We seen a need that if we could raise some money to just cover the cost for somebody that has sacrificed for us, that was the right thing to do. And so we started going down that path, and we got the proper paperwork certified and all that stuff from the IRS for our 501c3. And back in 2019, I think is what I remember correctly. So we've been doing stuff since then to be able to help as many veterans as possible.
So, what are some of the like stories and what are veterans telling you after the work has been done? How helpful is this type of work for a veteran who might not have a handrail? I've heard from folks that have utilized your nonprofit and the work that you guys do. And they tell me all the time, it's something as simple as like a handrail changes their lives in some cases, because they got to call their daughter, they've got to call their son to come help them into the house, and now they don't have that dependency. And I don't know if you guys have ever encountered veterans. One thing that they all seem to have a common denominator here, and it's that they don't want to ask for help. They're the type of people, veterans, who are like, I'm going to do it myself. And it's probably just years of military training and, boot camp. I'm going to do it myself. And they've got this can-do attitude. But having that independency, I think, really changes lives for veterans that you've helped. But what are some of the things veterans tell you after you've done the work?
Well, definitely a lot of them definitely do have that independence about them, and they don't want to ask for help. That's one reason why a lot of people refer their older parents that are vets. We get a lot of that, and then if a vet knows somebody else that we've helped, that's when they kind of reach out to us because they know, hey, they took care of my buddy. I need some help too, and all that good stuff. So it's kind of a combination of when they see something from somebody that they know that we've helped and it's helped them out, that's when they kind of reach out to us. And we're getting more and more calls every week about helping out a vet with our Ameren program or just some smaller projects that they need help with, like a handrail or just, putting up a couple pieces of siding that blew off. If there's money in the account to take care of that, we go do it. And then we also have partnered with different companies in our area that have really truly helped out with helping veterans out from roofs to plumbing to electrical. So we have a good team right now in place to help out with a lot of the different ailments that come around owning a house. Whenever that does come up and a veteran needs some assistance, we always try to provide them links to grants, or if we have a grant coming in that we know about that they can wait a little bit, we can try to get them a reduced cost, if not totally free, depending on what it is, type of thing.
And folks, you guys can always find us on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and Rumble. And I'm going to share really quick on the stream the website. So the website is servingvets.net.
Yes, it is. We're also on Facebook, X, and all the other major platforms now.
Right. And, here is where you donate, right? You had mentioned, if the funds are there in that bank account, we'll take that money and we'll go do the project. And on this website, I'm just thumbing through it. There's an intake form for veterans. It talks about small repairs, yard work, roof inspection, renovation project. All of that there is there. You can select it, and then you put your name, your phone number, and your email down. And then, you got your donors up here as well. And is there a spot to donate here?
There should be a spot to donate, probably on the bottom of the first page if it's not changed.
Right there. Yep. You can just click the take action button and it'll take you to make a donation. Your donation helps them connect people connect these veterans with veterans maintenance solutions, and your donation, big or small, it's obviously going to help our vets. A big donation might go towards a roof install. A small donation might go towards something as simple, like you said, Nick, a door handle. Then another thing you can do, right, is just spread the word. Tell your family and friends about Veterans Maintenance Solutions. And there's no better way to make an impact than becoming an active advocate for yourself. Follow the social media, folks.
That is very true.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, even just letting vets know, if like mom or dad is a vet and they're got that can-do attitude that I run into all the time, talk to them and say, hey, mom, here's the intake form. Dad, here's the intake form. They can come out and help you. And it's servingvets.net. Remember that, folks. Grab a green crayon if you have to. Write this down, servingvets.net. Or servingvets.net.
Correct. And we also have a golf event coming up in Ironwood on June 20th. So if anybody wants to sign up for our teams, it's on our Facebook and website as well, to try to raise more money to help more vets out.
Yeah, and that's a great way to raise money. June 20th, you said, at Ironwood Golf Course?
Yeah, it's June 20th at Ironwood Golf Course in Normal. And we're also looking for hole sponsors as well.
Okay, great. And you guys can find all that information on their social media as well. Just type it in your search bar, Veterans Maintenance Solutions. Nick, anything else you'd like to add? A Memorial Day message to some of our veterans who might be listening this morning?
Well, we definitely truly appreciate all the sacrifice that they've done for us. And that's why we're here to serve them.
Mm-hmm. I appreciate it, Nick, and you have a blessed Memorial Day. And don't forget, folks, go see Nick and us, Great Plains Media, 107.7, 92.1 The Bull, and then, of course, New Magic 99.5, Bob FM, Cities 92.9. We're all going to be walking out in the parade, and Nick's going to be there, too. Is that right?
That is true. I'll be there with the co-people in the back of the truck throwing out candy and stress balls.
Yeah, so that's going to be right outside Grossinger Motors Arena. You guys can go out there, and the parade starts at 9 a.m., I think it is. Yes, 9 a.m. I'm right, 9 a.m. The parade's going to start Grossinger Motors Arena, continue to Miller Zoo Park. Memorial Day ceremony will be held at Miller Park at about 10 a.m., folks, so you won't want to miss it. And Nick, it's been a pleasure speaking with you this morning. I hope you have a great day.
Well, thank you so much, and you have a great day as well.
All right, folks, we're going to be right back. It's Cities 92.9. Cities 92.9, the news and talk of Bloomington Normal. Man, we have talked to a lot of veterans today. We've been remembering those who paid the ultimate sacrifice, gave their life for this country. And I've been talking with service members, people who are members of the Air Force, the Army, you name it, we've had them on so far. Memorial Day isn't about barbecues. It's not the unofficial start of summer. It's about remembering the men and women who gave everything to this country, who laid down their lives so that way you and I could live in freedom in this high standard of living that we call the United States. We have such a high standard of living. So I've been joined by a group of veterans sharing their powerful, emotional, and deeply personal war stories, and the stories of others, the stories of their family members, the stories of their brothers in their unit. And these are the kinds of stories that really make you think about what this day is truly about, which is sacrifice, service, and honor. And today's show, we are going to be getting to this video. It's an interview that I did with the author of Dying Hard. It's available on Amazon. Dying Hard, Company B-39 Infantry Regiment, 9th US Infantry Division in World War II. And his name is French MacLean. He's a retired colonel of the U.S. Army. His brother served, his dad served. The book is really about his father, and he's an author of more than a dozen different books about the Second World War. And he's recognized as an expert. He's an experienced researcher. And his father, Myron, served as a private in Company B. So this Memorial Day, we're going to play an interview that I conducted with him. Enjoy. Cities 92.9, the news in talk of Bloomington Normal. Thank you so much for being here on this Memorial Day. And with me in studio, you know him, you love him, French MacLean. French, thanks so much for joining me here on Memorial Day. How are you?
I'm doing great. How are you doing today?
Good, good. I wanted to have you in, and I just want you to tell our listeners a little bit about you, your rank, your branch, and your service, because you served in the U.S. Army for over 30 years. Am I right on that?
Correct.
Over 30 years. That's incredible. Thank you for your service, by the way.
Thank you.
Today is Memorial Day, and your father and even your brother, they were service members. I want to talk a little bit about them a little bit later in the show, but first, tell us a little bit about you. Tell us what Memorial Day means to you.
Okay, I was born in Peoria, Illinois in 1952, went to West Point, graduated in 1974, and became a infantry second lieutenant within the U.S. Army. And over the next 30 years after that, I spent 12 years in Germany, then on Desert Storm, Iraq, again in 2003, was the U.S. Army Inspector General in Europe. And then my last assignment, I taught fundamentals of military strategy at the National War College to officers from the various services and State Department and other places like that. And I was the tyrant that made them all read Clausewitz and Sun Tzu and all those really thick books that none of them have any pictures.
Yeah.
During the time that I was in the Army, I got married to my wife, Olga. She was also in the Army, and we're still married after 44 years. And now we live in Decatur, Illinois. And occasionally I'll write a book and go visit around the country. We go visit my old Army buddies a lot, and whether it's Louisiana or Florida or Montana. So that's probably me in a nutshell.
So you're a professor, or like you taught at a
Right, yes.
What college was that again?
It's called the National War College. It's in downtown Washington, D.C. at Fort McNair. There's an Army base, a very small Army base there, and it's located on that base. It's a one-year course for military folks that are lieutenant colonel or commander levels, but they also have FBI students there, CIA, State Department, foreigners. Generally, most of the students there are aged 35 to 45. So this isn't a college where they're young adults there. These folks have all been in their services for probably 15 years at least.
Wow. So, Memorial Day, I want to know what this day means to you, and I never say Happy Memorial Day, it's not a happy day because you actually brought in these numbers and, it's just really stuck with me. You said these aren't just numbers, these are actual people. So you have a list of numbers there. Do you mind going through this list a little bit and telling us the numbers,
Sure.
but telling us why these numbers are more than just a number? And we're going to get to your book too, because your father was in this unit, and I'm going to let you explain the unit he was in, and the individual who's still alive that was in this unit. This was during World War II, correct?
Correct.
So you've got a list there. What does that list say right there between your hands?
Basically, you first asked how I view Memorial Day, and I think I viewed it the way almost every American did for the first, 60 years of my life, and that was, it was a time to remember the people that died in the service of their country. And I was of that view as well. But then, because my father never talked about World War II, he was a private first class in an Army infantry company in the 39th Infantry Regiment, 9th Infantry Division that fought in North Africa, Sicily, and then Europe, France, Belgium, those types of places. And he would never discuss it. So I became curious, and after he passed away, I started to research the unit, and my views on Memorial Day changed as a result of that search. And as you mentioned, actually writing a book on it. My views used to be, okay, Arlington National Cemetery, huge out there in Northern Virginia. There are more than 420,000 people buried there. Some of them died in war. Some of them served in war and then died later in life. Some of them very old in life, and it wasn't military or war related. Mm-hmm. But that 420,000, it's just a number. How do you quantify that or qualify it? Because it's more quality than quantity. And then I looked and found that in World War II, the United States had about 407,000 people who died during the war. Some military, some civilian that were working for the military. And they died all over. They died in North Africa, Europe, the Pacific. They crashed in planes on mountains in the Himalaya mountains in Nepal. And when a transport crashes into the side of a snow-capped peak in the Himalayas, there aren't any survivors. Yeah. But that's just a number, and it's hard to wrap your head around it. So when I was writing about my father's unit, I concentrated on his infantry company. He was a private first class, he carried a rifle. And that company had roughly 175 people on any given day. And during the last 11 months of the war, they lost 88 killed in action and 453 received Purple Hearts. Those aren't big numbers, and I was able to research every single soldier in that company.
So your father, really quick, he didn't die in service. He lived to be, what was it, 95?
92.
92.
Yeah.
92. And he died not of military-related causes,
Yeah,
right?
natural causes.
Natural.
Right. But he almost died.
Yeah.
Because in January of 1945, they were attacking, this is after the Battle of the Bulge, they're attacking through deep snow and against the Germans, and he gets hit in the head. And he goes down, he's unconscious, and the next thing he knows, there's a bunch of German soldiers that have grabbed him and are dragging him up the hill into the woods. He's now a prisoner of war. And the guys can't shoot at the Germans because they'll hit him, or they're worried that they'll hit him. The lieutenant, who is the platoon leader, he jumps up in the snow and yells, "Charge!" And immediately a German machine gun cuts him in half and kills him. So he goes into the prisoner of war camp. They interrogate him a little bit, but they know that a private first class doesn't know any military secrets. And so they put him into the camp, and I was able to later find the camp, and it's still in existence now, except it homes orphans and kids that don't have parents. They've taken down the barbed wire, obviously. But he went through that and ended up getting out in April of 45, and he only weighed 92 because they didn't eat very well when they're in the camp. It's almost starvation rations. But he didn't die.
Yeah.
And so anyway, I was researching these guys, and I went, the National Archives has sites all across the United States, and one of them having to do with personnel in the last century, military, is just outside of St. Louis. And so I went down there, and I knew the guys because I'd written some other books, and they had helped me with those. And they introduced me to the individual deceased personnel files. And those are the files of all the soldiers that were killed. And so I was able to look at those and find out not only did Sergeant Smith die on a particular day, but these files told me how he died. That a sniper shot him in the head with a rifle, or artillery hit him in the chest and the stomach, and this is how he went. And so now it's not numbers anymore. Now it's people. And as I'm researching it further, I find that at the start of every conflict, the Army, and I would imagine the Navy and the Air Force do the same thing, estimate what are we going to need for the war? How many tanks do we need? How much ammunition? How much fuel? How much food? And in one of the estimates, we estimated how many wooden coffins are we going to need because we think we'll sustain this many killed. And we didn't estimate high enough. And so what happened was in the fall of 44, we started having to bury our own dead in mattress covers instead of wooden coffins. And and then after the war, we dug up the temporary cemeteries and reburied the soldiers in regular coffins in cemeteries. And in the process of doing that, we cut a corner of each mattress cover off, wrote the soldier's name on it and his service number, and then forwarded it up the chain so they would know, okay, that soldier has been reburied, we've done the right thing. And those pieces of mattress cover, some of them with dried blood on them, are in the National Archives outside of St. Louis.
You held this.
And I'm holding them.
What was the feeling?
It's not a number. I don't want to get too religious, but it's a miniature version, in my mind, of the Shroud of Turin, except for a person that you've never heard of. And So
There's no greater love than this, than to lay one's life down for a friend. That's what the Bible says.
yes, yes, but it's a terrible thing when it happens.
Yes.
And so that was another thing that I found on there.
Yeah.
And then I looked and found that of the 88, 26 are buried in military cemeteries in Europe, at Normandy, Belgium, and the Netherlands. The rest are buried back here in the States. And I found that 16 of the 88 had widows, and almost all of them had parents that were still alive, but widows, and several of them had children that were born after the soldier deployed, because the 9th Infantry Division left the United States in October of 42 and didn't start coming back for 3 years. So some of those soldiers who left then, their wives were expecting, and they never came back. So they never saw their children, and their children never met them. And also inside the file are letters that the parents would write about the deceased, and I'd like to read one of them to you, if I could.
Thank you, French. We're talking with French MacLean. You're just tuning in, Cities 92.9. It's a Memorial Day special edition of Conservative Cat. I'm Conservative Cat, and I've got French here, and he's going to read a letter. Can you describe who wrote this letter? And this is in your book. You're reading straight out of your book.
Right.
And we're going to make sure that listeners know where to go. Can people purchase this book as well?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. So we'll get to that, but I do want you to read this letter and tell me about the woman who wrote it as well.
Okay. This is the mother of Private Walter S. Burke, and he was from Ohio. And she wrote, and he was killed on February 8th, 1945 in Germany. And he received a temporary grave in Belgium. And so on August 1st, 1945, his mother, Mary Loretta, wrote the War Department in a letter, and that letter is in his file, and I put it in exactly the way she wrote it. I did not change the grammar or the spelling. Mm-hmm. And she said, I am writing about our son, Walter S. Burke, that was killed February 5th, 1945. When could we get the remains of our son back? As you say, their grave are properly marked, recorded to preserve their identity. I would thank you to let us know when we could possibly get remains, and we could get things ready for that time. Please let me know when all about it. I thank you. Your truly, this is Walter, Mother. And that letter is still in Walter Burke's file. It's not a number. He's not a number. And I wondered, how did this lady view Memorial Day ever after in the war? And after the war, because every Memorial Day she wasn't thinking about 407,000 people. She was thinking about one person and how he wasn't coming home. And so that kind of got me to view Memorial Day more in terms of individual feelings and individual families than in the aggregate on how many soldiers died in the Civil War or World War I or World War II. And that's all important, but it really means something different to the families. There's an old saying that in peacetime, sons bury their fathers, but in wartime, fathers bury their sons. Mm-hmm. It's a big difference. And so anyway, sorry about that, but
sorry, I might choke up here as well
yeah.
a little bit. Your dad never talked about.
Yeah, he wouldn't. My brother and I we'd ask him, and he would just clam up. And then after we were in the Army, we kind of knew what we could ask him. For example, if you asked him how were the C rations, which are meals in cans when they can't get you regular food, how were they? Oh, he'd wax poetic on how bad they stunk, and were you ever cold and wet, and how often did you get to change your clothes? And oh, by the way, when he was in the prison camp from January to April, he never got one hot shower. He never changed his clothes at all.
He was a prisoner of war.
He was a prisoner, and what the Germans would do every so often is they'd take him outside of the barracks, have everybody take their clothes off, and they'd hose them down with water out of a fire hose, which was cold, and then they had to put on the same nasty clothes that they had just taken off. So if you had lice when you took your clothes off, the lice were still there when you put them back on. And so a lot of guys got sick because of all that stuff.
Wow. So your book, it's right there, and what's the title? Why'd you name it what you named it?
I named it, I didn't come up with the name until I got done. And I named it Dying Hard. And then the subtitle is Company B, 39th Infantry Regiment, 9th US Infantry Division in World War II. And it was because the 88 and they did not go gentle into that good night. They were in some very, very bad moments at the end of their life, and probably a lot of them knew what was going to happen. And some never knew what hit them, but some did. And the one soldier that you mentioned who's still alive, he turned 100 last August, and he was living in Florida by himself, and he fell, and he had a severe concussion, and the mailman found him, and
what's his name?
Yeah, his name then was Jay Levinsky. It's now Jay Levin. After the war, his father changed their last name. And so Jay, they found him, and he went to a regular hospital for a couple of weeks, and he survived the concussion and got better, but now he's confined to a wheelchair. He can't walk. He can't cook his own food. He can eat himself. He can use a fork and a plate, but he can't cook the food. So down in Florida, it's very expensive to have 24/7 care for the elderly. So he wasn't going to be able to do that more than a couple of months. So I went down there, and I'm retired, and I'm not important. I've got no clout. And I went down to see if I could talk to the VA to let him in, and I did, and they said he didn't qualify because he wasn't at end of care life. Like it wasn't that he had cancer and had 2 months to live. No one knew how long he would live because he had recovered from the concussion. So they said no. So I went upstairs and talked to the public affairs lady in charge and asked her, and she said the same thing. And I had a copy of the draft of the book that I hadn't sent in to the publisher yet. And I asked her, how do you want this book to end? And she said, what do you mean? And I said, I want the book to end that the Veterans Administration rode to the rescue like a modern day cavalry and took him into the last fight of his life. And they took care of him. And he ate well and he slept warm and people took care of him. Or that they didn't take care of him. The VA does a lot of great things, but they don't do a lot of great things really, really fast. It's like a huge ocean liner. It takes a long time to turn. And any organization, the bigger it is, the harder it is to turn. The next day, they let Jay in. One day, the VA changed that particular situation to do right by the soldier. And so Jay's in there still. I talk to him every several months. And the only thing, I mean, he's 100. I'm 73, so between the two of us, it's probably a pretty funny conversation. But the only thing is, I think he might think that I'm my dad, because maybe our voices sound alike to him. But that's okay. I don't tell him, Jay, that I'm not Dad. I don't mind. I just say, how you doing, Jay? And so he's doing fine.
What's your dad's name one more time?
Well, his God-given name was Myron MacLean. He hated the name Myron, so everybody called him Mac. And Mac MacLean. And he worked at Caterpillar for several decades before he retired, both in Peoria and Decatur, and then out in York, Pennsylvania.
Well, we're talking with French MacLean today, and he's got 30 years in the service. You were a colonel, along with your brother. He was ranked a colonel as well.
Right.
Can you tell me a little bit about your service and your brother's service?
Yeah, well, he was smarter than I was. He graduated higher at West Point than I did, so he decided to go into the tanks, into the Armor Corps.
Okay.
And I was at the bottom of the class. I was in the last 100, and they used to pick branches based on where you stood in the class. So the number one person in the class got their pick. And by the time they got down to the bottom 100, we all had to go infantry. So, but it didn't matter. I would have done that anyway, and because I thought I would enjoy that, and I didn't have to know as much as you do in artillery and armor and all those military intelligence. Mm-hmm. So that's and so he stayed in 29 years and is now, his wife is in the State Department, and they're about ready to go to Thailand. She's learning Thai in Washington, D.C. She's a diplomat, and so he follows her around now. They were assigned, excuse me, to England, Denmark, Nigeria, Rwanda, and now Thailand.
Wow. Well, French, I so do appreciate you coming on the show. It's really changed my perspective on Memorial Day, and I've always said this, and I'm glad that you brought up about how you were holding this. Glad, that's not the word, but it's really changed my perspective, this mattress covering, where they didn't order enough or have enough of these coffins, and they were putting bodies into these mattress coverings, and it's not just a number. These people have names, they had mothers, they had fathers, and you brought up something about, being too religious. I always say this on the show, and I've always said it for the last few years, every Memorial Day that we do a Memorial Day edition of the show, Jesus Christ gave his life for our spiritual freedom. Members of the military and of the U.S. Army, of the Navy, who pay that ultimate sacrifice, they're giving up their lives for your national freedom, for your earthly freedom here, because we wouldn't get to go to Burger King whenever we wanted to if it wasn't for men and women dying in these wars. We have tons of Jewish Americans right here in the United States, and they get to live a free life to do whatever they want to do. And that wouldn't have happened had World War II gone a totally different way. Am I right, French?
Right.
If these wars go different ways, we wouldn't have the freedom that we have here in America. So I always say that, where it's like, Jesus Christ died for your spiritual freedom. These people are dying for your nation, for your national freedom, so that way you get to go to your Starbucks or Burger King at 12 o'clock at night, and you get to have freedom of speech, and you get to go to your churches, and you get to worship your God, and you get to do what you want to do, because people were willing to bleed and die. And that's just something that's, and I've always said that, it's like Jesus, once you kind of make that comparison, you realize what a true sacrifice that actually is. So I just wanted to add that.
Okay, and let me add one more thing,
okay.
too. Some of the book is sad, but there's an old saying that the United States Army is good for one ridiculous laugh a minute. There's a lot of funny stuff in here. These guys they would get in a bar fight at the drop of a hat. they were always finding creative ways to spirit in alcohol into the unit. You'll find that you laugh a lot as well in the book because they're real characters, and some of them make MASH look tame in comparison. So I don't want people to think, well, this is too depressing a book. I tell people you're going to do three things. You're going to laugh, you're going to cry, and you're going to cheer in this book. So if you can do all three of those things when you're reading a book, I think it's a pretty good read.
Oh, yeah. And I'm excited. So it's called Dying Hard. And where can our listeners go to buy this?
The most economical place is Amazon.
Okay.
I mean, they sell everything generally at prices that are better than other places.
Okay. Go on Amazon, folks, and look it up. It's called Dying Hard. And can you read the subtitle? This is
Company B, 39th Infantry Regiment, 9th US Infantry Division in World War II. But if you type in Google Dying Hard and then French MacLean, it's going to come up.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, French, and I appreciate your service.
Well, thank you.
And I appreciate Olga. Olga's here. She's not on camera. But Olga, your wife here. The wives of service members, the husbands of service members, that's a sacrifice too.
It is.
You give them up, and thank you for your service, Olga, because she was in the U.S. Army as well.
That's right.
Yes, and you met her there. So you have a blessed day. Folks, we're going to be right back. Come back after the break. We've got more interviews ahead. Good morning. It's a Memorial Day special here on Conservative Cat Cities 92.9 with me, David Fries. He's actually a state representative, but I wanted to have him on the show because he is a veteran himself. Air Force active duty. He served there as a crew chief and then went into the reserves for about 4 or 5 years and then went into combat in Desert Storm. Your official title by the end of everything, you were a tech sergeant. Am I correct there, David? And
that is correct. Yes.
Your service for our listeners.
Yeah. So I started out as a mechanic on 141 active duty, and then I went into the reserves as a flight engineer.
And so you saw combat. So you were in the reserves, and then your unit was called out to go serve this country.
Correct. Yeah, my reserve unit was activated. It is actually activated early on. I was actually going through survival school. If those who are familiar with people who fly on aircraft, you got to go through survival school. I was in survival school at that time when the war kicked off.
Mm-hmm. So I wanted to have you on because I'm having several veterans on. What does Memorial Day mean to you? Because I feel like it means a little something different to those who actually served alongside. And I don't know if you ever saw tragically somebody lose their life, but it means something a little bit different to service members who see their brothers die beside them. I've already interviewed quite a few veterans. We've had some tears on the show, and we've had some laughs, but we've also had some tears. It's a little bit different for everybody. So, David, what does Memorial Day mean to you?
Yeah, it's having gone through the service and seen some things that most people don't see, because we actually have a real small number of people that actually serve. We always talk about the military and what they do for us. And having been through that, seeing the sacrifices that so many people make, it really appreciates the freedom that we have here in the United States. I've had the pleasure of, when I was in the Air Force, traveling to other countries, seeing other people, how they live, their living conditions, the freedoms that they don't have. It's really, we really need to thank our veterans, in particular those who have, lost their life for our freedom. I really come to appreciate what we have here in the United States and the freedoms that we have.
Mm-hmm. So tell me a little bit about Desert Storm. I feel like a lot of people, they'll know a little bit about World War II, and I had somebody on earlier, they talked about World War II, and his father served in a certain unit. And, everybody kind of understands World War II, but when you get into these newer wars, I'll just call them newer wars, where you served in Desert Storm, a lot of people, their eyes start to glaze over and they're not exactly sure, how or why we're free because of your service specifically in those wars. So could you explain Desert Storm a little bit for our listeners, why you guys went over there in the first place and what the goal was of your unit?
Yeah, well, so I was, since I was a flight engineer on the 141, we were support. We would drop people off, and I was very lucky, and I consider myself very blessed because my unit, and most of us in that role, we would leave the United States, we would go to Germany or someplace, and we would pick stuff up, and then we would transport it downrange. And then we would spend some time downrange, and then we would pick up people. Several times we medevaced people out of the desert. We brought them to a hospital in Germany. So that was rewarding. And so I'm again very, very fortunate that I did not have to carry a firearm. Was not in direct line of fire. We were in a support role, is what I would call it, and we would medevac people who were injured. However they were injured, back to a hospital to Germany, and then eventually we would take them to the United States.
So did you jump out of planes?
I did not.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
and and I always joke with the guys that we would run into in the Army. I said that we always made fun of them because they got what's called jump pay, and their jump pay was, I want to say, $75 at the time. Well, as flying an airplane, I got flight pay. So my flight pay was more than their jump pay. So we always made fun of them. Yeah, you're getting paid to jump out of a plane. I'm getting paid to stay in it. So logically, it didn't make sense. But and that's the camaraderie between the services. We always poke fun at each other, but at the end of the day, we support each other.
Yeah, explain that brotherhood. Do you still have contact with members of your unit? And is there something special about being in a unit or that relationship there? Several veterans that I've talked to already, they say that there's just this bond that you have with somebody in your unit.
Yep.
And it's a totally different relationship than, say, you and your friend or you and your coworker. This is a totally different relationship. Can you explain it a little bit for us?
Well, I think the harder the challenge or the more severe the incident that you and your buddies are in, the closer the bond is. And I have stayed in contact with a few people. Unfortunately, I had some of those pass away. That's just not military related. Just things happen. But you do have a camaraderie with those individuals that you go through service with, and you could be out somewhere and just meet somebody in different branch. Doesn't matter. There's an immediate connection with those individuals, and you start talking about the things you encountered, you may have gone through, things you witnessed, and again, very, very fortunate that especially the guys that have gone through more recently. I think it's therapeutic to talk about those things that you gone through with somebody who's had similar circumstances.
Mm-hmm. One more question, David Reason. I know we're pressed for time, but I wanted to ask, the Memorial Day, a lot of people will say, oh, this is the kickoff to summer, or this is the time to get your Memorial Day deal,
Yeah.
And, even though they didn't lose their lives, you had some people in your unit that you had mentioned that they're no longer with us, and we're remembering those. If you want to name names, you can. I think that would be great. This is a platform to do that. That's what we're doing today, this morning, is just remembering those people, and they're not going to be forgotten. But what do you think about Memorial Day, kickoff of summer sales? Is there this kind of a commercializing of Memorial Day, and how do you feel about that as a veteran? Maybe you don't even really recognize that. Maybe I'm just wrong on that. I just feel like it's a pretty commercialized holiday. I mean, it's
It
even
is.
considered a holiday.
No, you're correct. It is, and I'm okay with that in some respects. I just you can have it called the kickoff of summer. You can have your Memorial Day sale, but don't forget what we're doing here. Why we celebrate it. My wife and I. I have 2 children, and from very early on, we every Memorial Day, if I'm not speaking at an event, and I will be at one this coming Memorial Day.
Mm-hmm.
So what we'll do afterwards is we will visit the graves of family members who have passed away, if they served, and we will individually place flags on those graves, and we instill that in our children, so they know, because we don't want them to forget the significance of Memorial Day.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you so much, David Rees. Anything else you'd like to add?
No, I appreciate you having me on. It is a very significant day, and as a veteran, I do take it seriously, and I try to, when I have conversations with people, just remember the sacrifices that so many people who've gone before us have made. We have such a high standard of living in this country, and it's because of our men and women in the armed services.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you for your service, David Freeze, and thank you for your public service, being our state representative and taking the time out of your busy schedule. It's the end of session, so
Yeah.
I know things can get crazy towards the end there. So you have a great rest of your day, and thanks for joining me.